Hello, hello, hello. Levels are on. Today, I pose to you a bit of an open question, at least for me. And that question is whether or not creativity can be forced. I'm very split on this question because, on one hand, I am, like so many other artists, addicted to this idea of the muse, this icon of creative, just inspiration that strikes you out of nowhere and gives you the courage to actually start making things. And there is this temptation to want to wait around for the muse to come and tell you what to create. But on the flip side of this, that isn't a very productive way to be an artist. You know, if you're constantly waiting for the right moment, for the stars to align, for you to create anything, whether you're a musician, it's creating a song, a filmmaker making a film, the time that you spend waiting for inspiration could easily be used just pushing through and creating anyway. One kind of workflow that I've been enjoying lately is being very much in the process, because for me, creativity and the process behind the creative act that you are participating in, again, whether you're a musician or you're a filmmaker or what have you, a lot of the ideas come from actually doing the thing. And so it's best to not feel like you have to be inspired to even start working on something. Sometimes it's best to just throw yourself into it and the ideas come to you as you're working on the project. And I've had a lot of kind of small, I would say pseudo short film projects, things that I film around my apartment, where I start filming a shot that I think might look cool, and then I piece it together with other shots, and it starts to become something cohesive as I get into that process. But getting to that point is kind of a hard sell. You're basically telling me to jump into something with no expectation of how that thing is going to go along. Essentially, I need to create my own momentum. And that can be very difficult. And so I struggle with like how to approach creativity and furthermore my work in my day-to-day life, because I know I need to do daily uploads, which is something that I've committed to recently. And I've essentially, as of now, only committed to doing like Monday through Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday, I can kind of catch up and get ahead a little bit for next week's videos. And so I've committed to doing these daily uploads pretty much Monday through Friday. And the thing with daily uploads, and the thing that I like so much about it, is the goalpost is so clear. Your goal every single day is to put out something worthwhile, something that's worthy of being posted. Now, the trade-off is you don't get to be as polished and you don't get to be as picky about what the thing that you're putting out is. And that can actually be really helpful. But then it goes back to my question of, well, is forcing creativity worthwhile? Is it better to just sit back and wait for that perfect idea and then have perfect execution and all the time in the world to polish? Or is it better to put out lots of small things, even if that means forcing yourself to find inspiration? And I think I'm talking about a lot of things that kind of at once here. So I don't know if this video is even going to be helpful for anyone. But I've come to at least a few conclusions. One conclusion is that, yes, it is a good idea to force yourself to be creative, to take that first step, whether it be thinking of a cool shot idea in your apartment or in your house and just kind of seeing where that shot falls into what will be a sequence. And I think this approach works, of just start and forcing yourself to be creative, because at the end of the day, it is a more productive way to work because you are doing more. You're doing less of sitting around and waiting for inspiration. And what that equals is you really just getting your reps in and getting better at that craft because you're doing it more often. You know, if I sat around and tried to make the perfect film project, but I was only able to put out one piece of content per year, the irony is that perfect film project wouldn't be so perfect because I haven't gotten as much practice in. And so it's better for me to do lots of smaller things than fewer bigger things. But part of that, again, the way that you accomplish that is by forcing yourself out of a, I guess, position of complacency, of, not being inspired. It means doing things when you don't feel like doing them. And if you're lucky, then things start to click into place once you take that first step. But in the meantime, it's, it's scary. And I'm not denying that. Taking that first step, and when you're worried about wasting your time, I don't want to film a bunch of stuff that's not going to end up being good. Pushing past that fear can be difficult. But again, not doing anything is even more of a waste of time. So it's better to just get out there and start making things, whatever it might be. However, I've had projects that I did force myself to be creative. I knew I wasn't in the right headspace to make anything, and I forced myself to make something anyway. And that thing ended up not really turning out the way I wanted. Prime example, we filmed a batch of podcast episodes about a week or two ago. And the plan was to put it off a few more days because we had, batched a lot of content and it was coming out, and we had, several weeks of leeway. But on one particular day, we had planned on shooting, and I had just kind of said, hey, let's put it off till like next week, give it a few more days because I just need to like rest and chill. Well, I started resting. I started just chilling, and I felt guilty. I felt like I skirted my creative duties for the day. I was supposed to do this thing, and I called it off. And so what I did was I called Mateo, who does this podcast with me, and I said, hey, change of plans. I need to just stop whining. Let's if you're still free, let's just film these episodes. And he said, yeah, cool. So we came over and we filmed, and a couple of the episodes were good, but the other two that we filmed, we probably won't post because they were some of our worst episodes that we ever filmed. And I take partial credit for that, and what I attributed those inferior episodes to, the reason why they were inferior is because I felt like I was forcing myself to do something when I just wasn't in the right mode or headspace to do it. And I felt like that hurt the product. And so that complicates this question of, can you force yourself to be creative? Is it worthwhile? On one hand, I've had film projects that we just forced ourselves to do because there was an opportunity to do something, and we just made something and it turned out really good. That's always nice, right? No one's complaining when that happens. You feel good about yourself because you pushed yourself to do something that maybe you weren't open to doing, you weren't willing to do it. But then there are times where we will throw together a film project, forcing ourselves to do something that like maybe we're just not, we haven't thought through enough, but we're just kind of forcing ourselves to do something because that feels like the thing that we should do. We should push ourselves as artists and as creatives. In taking that approach, we've made some of our worst projects as well. Our recent micro short film was pretty much a train wreck. Like no aspect of that film is worthy of even being called a film. It just, nothing about it worked out. And again, it goes back to that forced creativity. Is the reason why the project didn't work out was because we were forcing something that we just weren't ready for, that we weren't in the right, it wasn't the right time to do it, or was it bad for other reasons? And I don't know. Like I said before, I'm split. To make another argument for the side of, no, you shouldn't force creativity is, we've all known someone or even been that someone who was like desperate for a relationship. And ironically, the more you try to like, find a girlfriend, for example, or find a boyfriend, the more you try to make that reality happen, the more you try to force something, the less likely it is for that thing to happen. And, I've felt that way in multiple ways. In one way, it's running this YouTube channel because I'm committed to putting out lots of things and, putting in the work and doing it. But I'm worried that maybe I'm forcing something that shouldn't be forced. And maybe that's actually jeopardizing my success. But then again, like, what's the alternative? And like I said, I've reached some conclusions when it comes to this issue. And one of them is, so what if forcing something could jeopardize it sometimes? Because it's clear that it's not the case that it always does. Like I said, with our short film projects, there's been some that were really good, and we forced ourselves to be creative, and we were creative, and it was great. A great example of this was my video that I posted on, it was Wednesday of last week. It was the creative advice that you'll actually enjoy video. And it kind of turned into a little tiny bit of a short film. And I threw that together in a day. And I had no expectations that I was going to create this piece of work that I'm actually proud of when I woke up that morning or when I started making that video. But then again, in pushing myself, I discovered the message as I was making the video, and I came away with a lot of shots that I was very proud of. And so maybe the answer here is to just not worry about it. Do whatever you feel like you have the capacity to do at this moment, and also understand that you probably have a greater capacity to do something than you even realize. I like to make a lot of analogies to working out, for example. I'm a runner, and I used to run on a very competitive level in track and fields, and I understand very well that the limit that you think you have is not the limit that you actually have. And that growth, and when it comes to setting a new PR, really comes from pushing boundaries that you thought you had or that you did have. That growth comes from that friction of, I ran this fast, for this length of time. And the only way to break that is to push myself when I don't feel like pushing myself. I'm already tired. The PR doesn't come from feeling better that day and just happening to run a better race, although sometimes that is the case. And again, no one's complaining when that does happen. But the growth, the other portion of the time, really does come from I'm uncomfortable. And last time I got uncomfortable at this phase of the race, I quit. At least, I eased up when I should have kept going. And a lot of the time when it comes to creative endeavors, I think we ease up a little too soon, and we prevent ourselves from experiencing the growth and the success that's on the other end of that. And so that's my PSA for today. And if you want to be inspired by a video that I was able to just throw together in no time at all, go watch my video from Wednesday, creative advice for people that you'll actually enjoy. I'll leave a link to that in the description and also at the end of the video, which should be about now. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.